What the world needs now is not just love, but all the virtues. Hi, everyone. We are having another discussion today about virtue. In January of 2021, most of the world was focused on the US presidential inauguration. It was more focused than usual because there was an underlying threat of violence and obstruction, possible obstruction. Why? Because we've come to a point where our thoughts are completely polarized, and it has rattled that nation so deeply. This business of polarization is happening not just in the US, but all over the world these days. We see it in every political discussion, but also discussions of all kinds. People, at least some people, are unwilling to engage in a discussion with courtesy and moderation. It's all about communication, but we're going to look specifically at one element of communication today, and that is the virtue of assertiveness. Assertiveness is the quality of being confident and self-assured without being aggressive. It's acknowledging the fact that every person is created with gifts and talents to contribute to the world, and so each of us is worthy of respect. Also, there's the balance to that. We also have the responsibility to be respectful, both those things. We know our worth, and we demonstrate our worth by our dignity and our self-restraint. We have the courage to speak up for what we believe is right and just. And we also have the responsibility to listen to other people when they voice what they believe to be right and just. We have the courage also to set boundaries without feeling guilty. We don't make demands. We don't beg either. Instead, we ask for what we need in a clear, polite, simple, and positive way. Aggressive people are mostly acting out of fear. Fear has its origins in the oldest part of the human brain, the amygdala. And that's the part of the brain that dictates whether we're going to fight, whether we're going to run away, or whether we're going to become paralyzed by whatever we perceive as a threat. Aggressive people obviously choose fight, and they perceive anything that challenges their opinion or their idea or their way of life, they perceive it as a threat. People who are unable or unwilling to assert themselves are people who are either too frightened or sometimes too lazy to speak up for themselves or for others. They will fall into either the flight and they'll shut down and tune out, or the paralysis and become passive. And that will lead to insecurity and anxiety. They may become victims of abuse. They may even eventually lose sight of their own needs, and they'll be so used to becoming second that they won't even think about what they want in life or what they need to have in life. Assertiveness is what enables us to respond in a balanced way, without fear and without aggression. Assertiveness Assertiveness lies at the midpoint between the extremes of aggression on one hand or being passive at the other extreme end. And neither of those extremes are either healthy or useful in communication. And quite frankly, communication lies at the heart of relationships of all kinds. When people are aggressive, they dominate, or they might even bully. They insist on their own opinions. On the other hand, when we're being passive, we won't speak up, we won't have the courage, we won't let our true feelings be known. And again, it's either out of fear or lack of confidence, or just being too lazy to want to make the effort. Either way, it's not a good situation. We rely on assertiveness to help us take control of our own emotions and to allow us to respond with appropriateness. In a large part, I think what we're seeing today in the world is the evolution of our ability to communicate. We're still at a really lousy point, but I think we've come to a time where people who have traditionally been dominant or even abusive are finding that people who have often been overlooked or oppressed, like women or people of color, they're reaching a point of acknowledging their own worth, and they're no longer able or willing to take that domination. And they're beginning to speak up. In a way, it's understandable that that sometimes leads to violence, because we aren't really very practiced at communication at all, but also communicating with respect, mutual respect, and assertiveness and appreciation of each other. We're still so passionate. We're kind of like adolescents in a way. I'd like to suggest that maybe what we're seeing in the world is the start of the process of the meek inheriting the earth. It's a wild thought, but I love it. So how do we become more assertive? How do we learn what to do? How do we avoid the extremes of aggression or passivity? Stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for your time and for your attention. I hope you find it as fascinating as I do to really look in depth at these virtues and look at practical ways that we can involve them in our life and practice them more deeply. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll subscribe or hit the like button. And if you feel moved, I invite you to visit my Patreon page and maybe consider helping out with this venture. What the world needs now is virtue. Thank you.